Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Limitless with Nadia. Today we have a special guest, Whitney Uland, celebrity coach. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
You guys might recognize Miss Whitney from a previous episode, which, by the way, was the top episode of Limitless with Nadia, at least before we turned it into an in-person podcast. So I figured, why not have Whitney come back for a part two, give the people what they want to hear.
Well, it's so exciting and inspiring seeing how you've built your business and built your, you're like a whole new level than the last time.
Thank you.
And yet it's also weird because I feel like, and I see this a lot. So if you didn't listen to that episode, I'm a celebrity coach. I help people become famous. I help people who are famous leverage their fame. And I think one of my intuitive kind of spiritual gifts is seeing people's vision and potentiality before it manifests in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, I'm like, yeah, this is who you've been this whole time. Aww. And so it's funny to be like, oh yeah, that was like a little Zoom call that we're just gabbing. So it's
that
awesome.
Means so much to me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Honestly, it's just so cool. Even seeing your content on Instagram and TikTok and seeing you expand as well and really share your message. Cause I think there's so many people that need to understand and look at fame as a resource and not just something that is so vain. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things I hear you talk about. So what has been, when you are coaching people on how to be famous, what is usually the starting point with that?
Yeah. So usually the starting point is giving people permission that it's okay to be famous.
Or want
it's okay to want
least.
to be famous.
Yeah.
I think that, there's so many things that so many directions we can go in this, but there's so many different reasons that we are encouraged to not want to seek power, to not want to seek fame, to not want to, and that can come back to societal conditioning, that can come back to gender norms, that can come back to whatever it is, religious upbringings, that kind of thing that teach us that people who are famous are vain or selfish or bad or, self-centered. And really it's just a tool. And I think fame, the resource of people's attention, there's also money is another resource. They're both really powerful resources. And I think that oftentimes the most self-aware of all people are the least likely to go after pursuing fame because they are so in their head about what everyone's going to think about it. And they think of fame as such a dirty word. So I feel like it really just starts with kind of normalizing it. And if there's any part of you that has the desire for fame, to pursue it. To go all in.
Just go for it. Yeah, I think it's so important to recognize that fame, it's not, like you said, it's not just something that's vain of I just want attention. It's wanting to use your influence for good because we see there's so many celebrities out there that are not using their platforms in a way that contributes to humanity. You know what I mean? So what are the ways that when you're helping your clients with that, what are the ways that you kind of help them understand and believe in the idea that fame can be a really good resource to use?
Yeah. It's interesting because I do think that I always say I attract the coolest clients and the coolest community because they are often very spiritual. And so it really does I was raised very religious. And for me, the most spiritual journey that I've had has been pursuing fame and pursuing my desire for fame and for impact. And so I feel like it's overcoming that hurdle. But often I also see a lot of people almost judging themselves and being oh, well, unless I want to be famous and be the next Mother Teresa, then it's vain or then shallow or whatever. And the truth is even if there's just this spark in you that wants, to have a following on Instagram or wants to, whether it's that or to sell out SoFi Stadium, whatever it is, it's because I believe that there are millions of people who have a soul contract with you, right? We have soul contracts with people that we don't necessarily, it's like a parasocial soul contract, basically. And they're people that we're supposed to entertain, to inspire, to uplift. I love when this happens. I was in New York City 2 days ago and someone stopped me and she was just Whitney, you've changed my life. She's I had the fear of being seen, and she's never paid for my work. She's not a client of mine, but it just was through the impact. And she was you gave me permission to have this new career. And especially I feel for women being able to have a way to make money and make money from home. I work with a lot of moms who are working from home and now are I have one client who's I make more money from TikTok than I've ever made doing anything before. And she's making it by inspiring people and making them laugh.
It's so crazy how a lot of people really do think that you do have to have this big vision or big, a lot of the times it just starts with sharing the things that you are passionate about and you feel inclined to talk about, and you don't know who needs to hear it.
Right. Well, and I think it's like people probably, I know they use me, but I would say you fall into this category as well, where it's like both of us, we're just naturally inclined to want to talk about spirituality and to want to talk about these kinds of things. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be as like, that doesn't have to be
an
your niche.
expert or specialist in that. Yeah.
In order to be a good-hearted celebrity. It's really just about like changing hands of who has power and who is able to have a voice. And I love that about social media because it's democratizing who gets to have a voice.
Totally. And I think that's such a big like theme right now with like all the things that are happening politically and socially. Like the gears are kind of turning and people are kind of being like, well, why are we giving all the power to those people when we could just be, you know, popularizing the people that actually really do deserve a platform to like kind of share that. Something interesting as well that I love about your story is that you were raised in a very religious background. And that's a very, I think that's something that a lot of people can resonate with, whether it's in the same conditions or not. Growing up in an environment where you were given a lot of very harsh conditioning, very strict conditioning. I would love to know more about that experience for you of like, what was that really like? What was your experience with being raised in your religion and what impact did it have on you?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I think I'm kind of like now just in processing leaving. So for context, I was raised Mormon. I'm no longer practicing. And I think my grieving process of it has now I'm like kind of getting more to the other side where I can be like, okay, it like gave me so many gifts and it was really bad for my mental health. It was not a good space for me to be in. But if I hadn't been raised, you know, I went to church twice a week, every week, my whole life. And every single day of high school, I went to church every single morning at 6 a.m. for an hour. And I went to a like Mormon owned college where I basically have a minor in religious studies. And even though again, that there was a lot of conditioning, a lot of shame, a lot of things that I've had to reprocess and work through. And you know, I ended up being diagnosed with PTSD from a lot of the experience. However, I've been thinking about how and why the world works and how spiritual things happen and why, like those kinds of conversations I've been having since I was literally 2 years old was when you kind of start that. So I think that, and you know, at its core, it is supposed to be family centric and supposed to be love one another and supposed to be look out for your neighbor. Like I did have good things from it. But yeah, it was really hard. And I think it really, so it really tampered who I am and it tampered my light and tampered, you know, I think this also happened at school in a lot of ways, you know, being like the chatty kid or I was the theater kid and I wanted to do everything and I started the math club and I like just, you know, whatever. And that type of personality is never going to do well in an environment that is like, we need you to fall in line. Yeah. Right. And so whether that is a school system, whether it's, you know, a conservative religion, whether it's the country you grew up in, whatever it is, it teaches you at the subconscious level that it's not safe for you to stand out. And so I feel like my life, like my dharma is to have had to overcome all of that and to, you know, and I really did have like the dark night of the soul. Like truthfully, I where my mental health was so bad that I was worried for my own life. And I was like, I need help because that condition got so bad. And so I feel like though that whole experience was something that I needed to alchemize in order to be able to help the millions of people that I do impact.
Totally. I'm so grateful to you for being so honest and open about sharing that, because I know it can be very difficult. And I think, you know, again, there are so many people who are kind of in the same space, and it's really cool to be able to look at all of the really hard stuff that you've been through in your life and be able to see the purpose in it of like, oh, no wonder I had to struggle in that direction. I was literally designed to find my way out of it so I can teach other people how to do the same thing.
Well, and you know, I remember, I feel like obviously there were hard things growing up for sure. And, you know, we all have different things, but I felt like the first like big hard life lesson I learned was that my dad died when I was 23 and I moved home to be with him and take care of him. But he was my best friend. Like he and I were so close and he was my biggest cheerleader. And I didn't realize that I didn't really believe in myself. He just believed in me. And so when he died, that was what I would say was kind of like the catalyst for my healing journey and my spiritual journey. But I remember very specifically after he died, just kind of, I mean, you know, obviously we don't have answers to this. It felt like my dad's voice. It felt like an angel. It felt like, you know, intuitive, whatever, we don't really know. But of this line, which was, you need to be the hero of your story. And that I think was a really profound moment for me of realizing, yeah, we kind of do have to silver line our problems and we can't just be like swallowed by them. And obviously I think sometimes that can become like toxic positivity, and that can be, you know, not processing hard things that happen. But I really do try and live my life as just being the hero of any circumstance that life throws at me. And
totally,
you know, there's been a lot since then too. And that has really started for me, I think.
Well, I'm really sorry about your loss with your dad. And, you know, like you said, you really, there are things that happen for you to show you and teach you that you are here to be the main character of your story. And there's actually a TikTok comment that I saw the other day, and it was like, whenever I'm going through something really hard, I just remember that the main character of every movie can't have it that easy. You know, they need that stuff. You're the protagonist, you know, you're going to be like put through the ringer to go through stuff, but it's to shape you. It's to give you the experiences that you need to break the barriers and evolve.
And I feel like I would be interested to hear your thoughts on this as well, about like how, because people often ask me, you know, how do I bring that into my content? Do I bring that into my content? Because I'm such a proponent that you will be in what I call celebrity energy. It's the it factor. It's when you're magnetic, when you are unafraid of being seen for who you authentically are in that present moment too. So not gaslighting yourself, not whatever. And so then people get confused because they're like, do I need to be happy all the time to get followers? Or they'll go the opposite direction. They're like, do I need to tell everyone that I had a terrible day today and whatever? So I have thoughts, but I'm curious where you kind of land in terms of that.
So yeah, that's it. Cause I also think about that all the time too, right? Of like, where's the line of like, how much do I share and when do I share? And I think the first thing for me personally as a content creator is I will always honor my need for privacy as it comes up. So when I'm going through something very, very difficult, I'm not going to force myself to make content if I'm like, I need to be not perceived by anyone right now so I can figure out how I'm feeling and just process all of it. But when I do reach a point with that where I've kind of processed, I've come to the other side and I feel like I have some wisdom to share on it, I'll talk about it and I'll bring it up, you know, and I won't include any detail that I don't feel is personally necessary, because I feel like I'm also quite a private person. And so I think it's important for me to also recognize the line of how much do I need to be sharing versus how much can I just kind of keep off of it.
It's interesting though that you say that you're a private person, because your energy is so open online. And like, I think that's also kind of like a misnomer. Well, let me ask you this. So when you're saying sometimes you'll process it, and you're like, I don't want to be perceived, do you still show up and create content at all, or you're just like windows down?
So it kind of depends on the severity of what I'm going through. If I'm like really hitting a rock bottom with something, I will usually disappear for like a week, 2 weeks, and not create any content from that at all. Just because I feel like I'm one of those people that like I feel my feelings very intensely. I mean, you know, as an empath, we're just like that. You know, we're just designed that way. So I feel like I would be doing myself a disservice if when I'm in that state, I try to kind of fake it like I'm not in it, or just like create content from that space if it's not feeling authentic. It just doesn't, again, I would just be doing myself a disservice by doing that. So what I prefer to do, again, is just allow myself to feel whatever I need to feel off the grid. And then like once, again, the dust is kind of settled, and because also when I'm in the midst of that darkness and that chaos, I'm so consumed by it that I don't really have anything else I want to share anyways. It's like my focus is so pulled into that experience. And that's why if you ever see, like if you ever see when I post on my Instagram stories and I'm sharing little nuggets of wisdom, or I'm making a video about how to get through the really hard shit, that's coming from a place where I had to either just go through it now, or it's something that I've dealt with firsthand in my life. And I would not have been able to learn and grow through it if I didn't give myself the chance to do that while it was happening.
Really present with it.
Like I feel like sometimes like content creation can be a little bit of an escape, just to kind of numb what you're feeling and just focus on something else. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
So I would rather just go through it first and then kind of resurface.
I totally agree. Do you, I have same and different thoughts. Do you post anything during that, or you just kind of go blank?
I kind of just go blank, which I've also been thinking about, like, okay, how do I kind of balance between making sure I'm kind of consistent with how I'm showing up, but also respecting my own need to be off the grid. And it is so, like, when I'm in a funk, oh my God, it's so hard. I'm sure you know, it's the same of like what do I even share? What do I even say when I'm so consumed by something that I feel like
right.
I can't think of anything else?
Well, I'll share tips for that. So one, my social media manager and I work on this, which is that we have just like a bank of content.
Yeah, just to
and we have a full month worth of content if we need to pull from, it's repurposing, it's, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And I also am in the position now that she can do it. And because sometimes it is just like even getting on, like, I feel like as an empathetic person, when I'm getting on the internet, I like feel the people.
Yes.
Like it's not, I'm not talking to a void.
Yeah.
And
it's the collective. You're tuning into the collective.
Yeah. And I feel the same with, like, that's why I always have like 60 unread messages on my phone, is because when I am going to respond to a message, I am like with that person.
Yes.
It feels like I give them the same presence that I would in person. And so it can even be hard to just like get on and press share when you're in that state.
Yeah.
That said, I don't remember if we talked about this in the last episode because I was in the middle of it, but I was going through a really gnarly divorce and became a single mom to a baby very unexpectedly. And I was in this position where it really was sink or swim. I had so much business debt, and I was like, I have to live in Los Angeles. I'm now on my own financially. I just come off maternity leave, so my tax returns were garbage. And I had to get an apartment on my own, and so any of the skills that I have wouldn't pay enough for me to live the current life, have the time that I need, and like get an apartment and deal with my debt. And so it was like sink or swim, figure it out. And it was this, I mean, the hardest thing I've ever done at this point, to continue showing up every day while I was processing that. But I think similarly to you, and that was before I had a social media manager. So I kind of like set some boundaries. I was like, we are posting 3 times a week. That's it. And was like, one of the other things is I decided that was enough.
Yes.
Right? I think that's something that people like forget when they want to create content, that it's like, yeah, there's all these rules and like post 5 times and whatever, but it's like, that's only working if you believe that that's going to work. It all comes down to the beliefs that you're having about creating content. And so you can also just believe, I just need to post 3 times a week and that's enough in order to go viral. That's enough in order for me to, you know, whatever.
Totally.
So that's one thing. The second thing is that I really made it a point to process my emotions and just meet myself with compassion in every moment. So it would be, I mean, and my background is in acting, right? In theater and on set, you go on set, you go on stage on days that you're having a terrible day, and you have to sing and dance and be happy and say all of the lines, and it has to be authentic because people can tell if you're phoning it in.
Yeah.
And so what I would do on those days was just literally take myself and just sob or process it or be angry or whatever I needed to feel, and then be like, and we gotta do this. Because the same as how I used to show up for my 9-to-5 job, even if I was having a bad day, this was my 9-to-5. And this kind of, I did feel a little backed into a corner, which is not something I wish upon anyone.
Yeah.
But all of that said, and then the third thing is I didn't talk about what I was going through while I was going through it.
Exactly.
Because it's just,
it's too hard.
It's too much.
Tough.
And the thing is, you can actually create an audience that loves that because people are picking up on your energy.
Yeah.
And so I could have easily picked up an audience of single moms, of people who felt betrayed, of people, you know, whatever. And that's not the audience that I want. And so it's like, you have to kind of continually, and I think you're a great example of this, be like, who's the future version that I'm being, and let me show up as that person.
Totally.
And limit that's who I am. And sometimes I honestly think of my social media like a character that's like the celebrity version of Whitney. Like, and my therapist and I were talking about this, where it's like, I almost kind of see myself, and I know this is weird. I'm curious if you have thoughts on this, because I am like, it is the most authentic version of me, which to me is like the highest self version of me.
Yes.
But I'm also human. That's not me all of the time.
Yeah.
And I kind of think of that version of me as like separate and almost like a hologram. And it's like this character that I step in and out of if I need to. And that kind of helps with the separation of it.
That's so interesting. I think, because I do the same thing. I have like an alter ego almost that I step into of like, this is the version of me that I want to put on social media.
Have you read The Alter Ego Effect?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
What is that?
It's basically about, I mean, I kind of skimmed it because you kind of get the idea in the first couple chapters.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this idea of building out an alter ego, and like Sasha Fierce was Beyonce, that kind of thing. So you have one?
Oh my God. That's the way I was able to build what I built up until this point. Like, it's something I used to talk about in earlier episodes all the time of like, like when I had just gotten fired from my job, obviously I was feeling so humiliated, so embarrassed, so rejected because it came out of nowhere. I didn't see it coming, and it was just, I was like blindsided, and I didn't have a backup plan. So I was like, oh my God. And I think like as a response to that, because I was also kind of angry. I'm like, how dare you? How dare you fire me for something so trivial and stupid with no warning? And so I took that emotional energy and I channeled it into, you know what? I'm going to be the girl that got so stinking rich off TikTok that like, that's it. That's just the way, it happened.
That's how it happened.
Yeah. So I kind of like curated with that an alter ego where I was super confident, very magnetic, very boss bitch energy. Like, I have my own business. Sorry, I'm too busy counting my cash to like whatever, you know, like that kind of, I don't want to say arrogance, but it's almost like the counter of like feeling small and humiliated, and instead like literally just being like, nope, I'm her. Sorry, like can't help you. So when I would step into that, like I would do it actually every morning on my drive to work, or on my drive to not work. It was like every morning I would just go get coffee. Yeah. And I would get in my car and literally hold myself with the body language and the posture. Like I was driving a 2012 RAV4 that I was driving since I was like 16 years old. And I'm whipping this like it's like a Porsche. I'm like, you know what? Sorry, I have to call my assistant. Okay, I have to talk about depositing all this cash from my launch. Like I would be thinking things like that, and it really does help. Yeah. Because it really teaches your brain and your body what that level of confidence feels like without all the pressure of like people are watching me. It's like, no, I'm just doing this when I'm by myself.
That's what I always tell clients to practice it in the grocery store.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good way to do it.
And specifically, it's like, you know, if you are a celebrity, how are you showing up? I just was spending time with, do you know Coco Rocha, the supermodel? She was saying, you know, she's like, I'm paid to be Coco Rocha. Like I am paid for that personality. And I totally feel the same way. And I think, and I think that also kind of ties into being a good-hearted celebrity, being a good person, is like you're talking, you're having the conversations. When I walk into a room, it's kind of jarring to people who, I think you do this as well. People who don't do this are very like confused when it's like I walk in and I'm like, I'm talking to the barista. I'm talking like we're making jokes. We're like locked in as if they already knew who I was when I walked in.
Yeah, it's a whole different demeanor.
And it becomes this like you move into this like different dimension.
Yeah, you're literally timeline hopping. I feel like 100%. When you do that, because you're embodying such a different version of yourself. That vibration has such a different impact on your entire environment. And actually, maybe that's something I really want to talk about too, because I know there's a lot of you listening to this podcast right now that really are stuck in this space of feeling small. And because I get this a lot from followers, whether it's comments or DMs or whatever, and they're like, I really just want to know how to be confident like you. I really just want to know how to be, you know, magnetic like that. And I really want people to understand that it's really not as hard as you think it is. But I think the baseline is that you have to like yourself as a human being.
What does that look like for you?
For me personally, it's like having my own back. Like, for example, when I used to make videos on TikTok, and I mean, granted, those would perform well, but like I would come from the space of like, I have to say things very perfectly and I have to, you know, be very structured and be whatever. But then as I started to get more comfortable with myself, I would let my personality quirks kind of come out and let the message like come out the way it would with a FaceTime call on like with a bestie, you know? So like, for example, like there was one video I did where I tripped over my words and I was like, oh, okay, delete that from your memory. That didn't just happen. You know, like things like that, where I would just kind of let those in and not feel like it was something I needed to hide or kind of water down. That is what really sent it for me.
Okay, you know what that reminds me of? This is my hero origin story. Let's be very clear. Is that I remember I was at a friend's house. I was like 4 to 6 years old, young. And we had gone swimming in her pool and then come back in the house and put on our clothes. I think I just pulled my clothes over my swimsuit because my underwear was like in the leg of my pant and it like fell out. And like all of the siblings of this family like pointed and were like, is that your underwear?
Oh goodness.
And it was like this moment of being like, oh my God. And I remember specifically like my body freezing and I feel like it was this moment of time and I was like, yep, I guess I gotta go put that back and like put it back up. And it made the whole room laugh. And I feel like that's when I realized I was like, oh, anything that people make fun of me for, if I just own it. Then I win them over.
Oh my God, that is such a good story.
I think that's the same, like that's kind of what, you know, what you were saying with the content. And I feel like it's the exact same thing. You know, I'm recording I did this piece of content about I ran into Miley Cyrus at the Grammys. My eyelash fell off during the piece. And I was like, well, yeah, my eyelashes were falling off. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
And that's really what makes you human.
It's authentic.
It's authentic. And I think also if someone is wanting to, we all have people in our life. We have places in our life. We have situations where we do feel big, where we do feel strong, where we do feel confident, whether that's just with your, cats in the kitchen, or you're hosting a girls' night, or you're doing a craft night. Like, it literally doesn't matter. We all have somewhere where we're like,
you're in your element,
where I'm in my element.
Yes.
And that feeling,
it's like a flow state. It's like a hyper presence where you're
Exactly.
so in the moment, you're not even thinking. And I think that's also the difference when you like imagine somebody walking into a room and they're the opposite of magnetic, right? It's because you can tell they're so stuck in their head and they're micro analyzing every single thing they're doing, everything. So to the point where they're not even present. It's like everything can kind of catch them off guard because they're just stuck in their head.
Well, and so the way that I learned how to like break this all down is through acting, right? So when you're doing an acting scene, you never want to do a scene with a dog or a baby because they'll pull focus, because and like everyone's just going to want to watch them because they're just present.
Authentic.
They're just living their life and they're okay with being perceived. And the same thing with, if you're doing a scene, and especially like if you're doing an audition, right? The job of an actor in an audition is to play the character authentically, to deliver the lines and to, be this person. And if you start thinking about, am I going to get this job? Is the casting director going to like me? Then you're literally not doing your job. And that's the difference between a good and a bad actor. And most people can't quite articulate it with acting. They're just like, that's a bad actor, but they can't really say,
they don't know why.
They're just like, it's just not, it doesn't hit the same way. And especially like like if you're trained, you can tell, oh, this person has really good technique versus this person is actually just a really fucking talented actor. They have the technique and the it factor.
Yes.
And it's just when you're in that like unaware. And I think that also, when you're podcasting, when you're in that flow state, if you're trying to identify where that is, it's the times that you lose track of time. It's the moments that you're like, oh my God, 10 hours just passed. And
didn't even feel it.
I didn't even feel it. Or someone says, how did the podcast interview go? And you're like, I don't remember. Like, it was good. But if you can be like, well, we said this and this and this, that usually means you were kind of like thinking about it while it was happening.
Totally. And I think something else that has also really helped me a lot with creating very magnetic social media content as well is whenever there's something I want to share, it ties into the hyperpresence. I'm so focused on the message because I'm so excited about the message that I'm delivering that I don't even really care about the itty bitty details of like, 100%. Is this a long enough clip? Is it, all the strategy stuff that we get caught with? Like, I'm like, I literally don't care. I'm just here to tell you this because it feels so relevant to me right now.
Well, and I feel like because if you've tried to make content, I'm sure you've heard that people are like, get a strong hook.
Yes.
And I've had so many people be like, you're so good at hooks. Do you know how many times I've thought about my hook? Zero. Like,
because a hook isn't even necessarily a real thing.
It's not and I think that it's a marketing tactic. Really good marketing is just intended to mimic natural human behavior when someone is excited about something.
Exactly.
And so you actually just are excited about the thing that you're talking about. And I think like, it is worth noting if you're a person that you're like, I do feel small in my life or whatever, it might be worth checking out. Am I actually doing things that light me up?
Totally.
Am I stuck in a lane that my parents wanted for me? Am I doing the things that society tells me? Like, if you don't have these things that you are really excited about, I think that's worth questioning and looking into and kind of starting there.
Totally. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of, and it's not even that they know it, but it's like they don't give themselves the opportunity to explore things that don't necessarily relate to making money or making a career or making whatever. And that's usually where it starts. I had no idea that I was going to be a manifestation coach because I was making content about the book that I was reading, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Like, like those dots weren't connected at the time. And if you just give yourself the space, like you said, to ask yourself, when am I catching a flow? When is it so innate and so natural to me and so fun for me that I'm not even thinking about anything besides what I'm doing
totally
right here and now?
And I think it also comes with time and with age and with, like I talked about how it's like, that experience that I went through where it was like, I have to make content and baby and mom and, all of the things. But I also, I'm in my early 30s. Like I had time where I got to know myself and really had that. And I think even just carving out, whether it's vacations, whether if it's just like, I think one of the best uses of our time is just to create space for us to be with our own thoughts.
Totally.
And be like, what do I think about? What do I like? And journaling and just that mindfulness, you learn so much about yourself. And that's when then you're going to start to just intuitively be led to the next thing.
Exactly. And as you take those steps forward towards whatever it, like, that's when the avenue will start to light up of like what you can be doing more of. That feels really good. I think there's something else as well to say about, back to the magnetism thing. Practicing speaking like you're not in your head while you're speaking. Does that make sense?
Maybe.
Like really speaking from that place of presence of like, you know, say it how it comes out authentically. Like don't feel like you need to alter the message in a certain way or structure it in a certain way. Like however it's being downloaded to you.
Yes.
Like just channeling from there and putting it out there in that way.
And you're specifically talking about making content?
I mean, making content, but even just showing up magnetically anywhere you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like anytime that you're like, okay, I'll say this, I'll do this, it's like you're kind of dead in the water. And I think one of the things that they always say in acting, because especially in theater, you don't want to do the same exact performance every single night because it'll get really robotic. And so one of the things they say is like, go left. So when you normally maybe turn right, it's like actually just move your body to the left this time and just throw some wrench in there. Interrupt the pattern. Yeah. Even if it's like, you know, start waking up half an hour earlier and just like lay in bed and watch the sunrise or something that you don't normally do can just kind of help us like break out. Something that I love is that, this is like a time travel hack, is that our brains process time in the past based off of the number of changes that happened. So if you, for example, there was a year that I lived in Brooklyn, my brain now in hindsight perceives that 1 year just as long as the 1 week that I spent in Iceland.
That's crazy.
And so the way that you can like hack time travel is to just to create a lot of memories by creating a lot of different changes. So most people do that through travel, but I think also through passions, through, oh, this was the time that I was talking about this kind of content. This was the period of my life like that I was with this group of friends every night or whatever. Life's just too short to not get all of the experiences.
Yeah, totally. And it does make sense that when you get stuck in a rut of doing the same thing over and over, it like time doesn't feel like it's moving. You feel like you're living the same day over and over again.
And when you're doing that more, when you're kind of knocking yourself off kilter and mixing it up, that knocks you into hyperpresence a lot faster. So it's going to help you get to your goals faster. It's also going to help you be more magnetic a lot easier without having to overthink, because you're just going to naturally, you know, this is kind of sad, but one of my friends, she actually had to evacuate during the Los Angeles fires. And I was like, I know this is a really bad, and she was updating everyone online about kind of her whereabouts and how things were going. And I was like, I know this is a really bad time for you, but you just need to know that you've never been more magnetic on camera.
No way.
Because she was kind of pushed into this. And like for her, that's a very like traumatic example.
Yeah.
But it does. It's just like when like we're focused so much on like, get it perfect, get it right, say the right things, whatever, that's when we lose it.
Totally. It really, that is such a good like mindset reminder of just do it, just show up and say it exactly how it's coming through. What else for you do you feel like as a celebrity coach, what are the other tips that you have for people who are wanting to embody more of that magnetism, more of that authenticity?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, always follow the breadcrumbs. I think there's also the feelings that we're feeling come from the thoughts that we're thinking. So thoughts precede feelings. Feelings generate or like guide our actions. Our actions create our results. So if you want to create the result of being a celebrity, you got to kind of back that up and go all the way back to the thoughts, right? What are the thoughts that a celebrity would be thinking? What would you be? And it really does come down to, as corny as it sounds, it's the Delulu is the Solulu, right? Where it's like really coming up with and like scripting out, not only, because I think often we'll say, you know, what would the celebrity version of me wake up and a limo is outside and, you know, those kinds of things. Sure, that's super fun, but more, what are you thinking about? What are you not thinking about? What things are no longer worth your time? What things are no longer exciting to you? That's actually something that I think is kind of, we need to talk about more, is it is, right? It's taking your goals off the pedestal, but specifically remembering that anytime you create a result, by that point, it's going to be boring. There's going to come a time where whatever your goal is right now, whether it's weight loss, whether it's making money, whether it's creating content, a relationship, that's going to be boring to you.
Yeah.
And what we often do is we think, oh, when I have it, when I have the following, when I have the whatever, I'm going to feel amazing.
Yeah.
That's because there's a part of you that thinks that that's like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
It's like we think that it's so far like in the future and so far from where we're at. And so we have to kind of like, you know, take it off the pedestal, remove it, and get it to a place that it feels normal, where it's no longer exciting to be making money in my sleep, going viral every single day.
Because it's too easy.
Because it's just a thing.
Yeah, you normalized it.
Yeah, and so really getting into those thoughts. And that's actually something, so Nadia and I worked together on relationship coaching. And it was so funny because I had this intuitive hit. I think I've told you about this.
Yes.
How I just was like, Nadia's supposed to help me with relationships.
It's crazy.
And I was like, does Nadia even help with relationships? Like, I was like, I don't know if she does. And I was like, okay, maybe at some point I'll like hire her one-on-one or something. I don't know. But I was also kind of like, I don't know. That's just kind of how it was landing for me. And then I had this moment where I was like, I need to not be dating. I'm like, I need to take a break mental health wise, like, and just fully go all in on my business, all in on my baby, like all of those things. And then I saw that you opened this like mastermind cohort program about relationships. And I was like, okay, well, I did just get this like download that I'm supposed to work with Nadia on relationships. So, and you like had just like put it on sale for like a flash sale kind of thing. And I was like, okay, like I guess I'll do it. But I came in and we meet all the other girls and I'm like, yeah, so I'm actually not looking for a relationship, but like for whatever reason I'm supposed to be here. And it changed my life. Nadia's amazing. If you've never worked with her, do. And I think a lot of the work that we did that was so helpful for me was, I think you really encouraged me to follow my desires. Yeah. And to like, I'm like, I don't want a relationship. You're like, okay, great. Like yes, anded everything. Yeah. And I think that that's the amazing thing about a coach is someone who's just like, yeah, this doesn't really make sense, but we're going to go in that direction. And what ended up happening was, I don't know the exact timeline, but right around or after or whatever was when I met my boyfriend. Yes. And it's like the best, healthiest, happiest relationship I've ever had.
Oh, I love that.
And so but I think a lot of that came back to removing it from the pedestal and like seeing myself as worthy of having.
Yeah. And not like pushing it down and not, you know, trying to pressure yourself into thinking the other way. If you just follow what feels right, you'll get the answers you need to pivot where it's necessary. Exactly. You know, and that's the other thing that ties into authenticity, right? Exactly. You have to be authentic to yourself. If there's something you're really wanting, if there's something you're really wanting to follow, odds are it's because you're supposed to be doing there's something in that for you. Yes. That you won't really know until you're on the other side of it.
Well, and it's like this idea of like, if there's two paths and your intuition is like, we need to go down the right path and you go down and it's a dead end, at least then you know a lot faster so you can go down the other one. Whereas if you kept going down the other one, even if it's the right path, you might have second guessed it. Yeah. Right. And like, I think it just,
you have to lean into the mistakes. Yeah. Like there's a saying of how, you know, you could be rejected 99 times and quit at that point, not knowing that the next one was going to be the success. Totally. You know, you just have to lean in.
And it was just like such a powerful reminder of me of just how, I mean, because I'm sure you witnessing me through all of this, it was hard. It was hard, but it also was like the easiest thing I've ever done in terms of manifesting. Like, it's like overcoming the limiting beliefs was so hard.
I feel like a big one for you while we were doing that work was being afraid that you being in a bad headspace or a negative headspace was evidence that you were on the wrong track. Exactly. That was huge for you.
So huge. And I was just like, this can't be working. And so then though, I was like second guessing the relationship when it started because I was like, I'm not high vibe right now. Yeah. Like there's no way. And also because it was like, I don't remember if I even told you about this. We matched. I was only on Hinge for 24 hours and it was the day that he moved to LA. So we just like happened to cross paths and I deleted the app and was just like, no, I'm actually not. But I'd given him my number. So I was like, okay, we'll go on the date. Like it was so kismet that it made me be like, okay, this can't be real. Instead of being like, Whitney, we just worked on all of these limiting beliefs that like, I can be easy, that this can just fall into my life. And I wasn't doing, you know, and it was interesting just being in a cohort of other women who were like maybe more actively pursuing relationships and, you know, we're obviously all on our own timeline and on our own path, but that was like specifically a really powerful experience for me, just to be like, oh, it literally just comes down to like the mindset. And
That's everything.
Like that's
law of
that's
assumption.
it.
What you
Law of
believe to be
assumption.
like, if you are in a space where you believe that there's so much more work you have to do and there's so much more of a mountain that you have to climb before something happens, that's also you in essence trying to control it too.
Yeah.
Of like, you think you understand the exact conditions that are needed to be met in order to qualify for this manifestation to come through, when in reality your desires are always like actively searching for you, and they're going to find you in the right timing regardless of where you are. You just have to practice acceptance of wherever you are at any given moment without assuming that it's wrong.
Well, you know what's also interesting about this? So I'm like, I had this kind of intuitive hit of like, I'm going to work with Nadia on relationships, but I didn't chase that.
You let it come to you.
It just, right? And then, but then sometimes with other desires, it's like, oh no, I must need to go and chase this and get this.
Make
and it's
it
like,
happen.
What if you literally can't stop it from coming to you? Because I, by all accounts, should have. I like ended up breaking up with him, like all of the things, and then we're like it just still was like
happened.
Was supposed to meant to be.
Totally, and that's like another message too that's so huge is, whenever you do get an idea for something or like an intuitive, because that happens to me too, of like, oh, I just have a feeling I like this something is gonna come from this or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember where I was going with this, but something about I think authenticity as well of. If it doesn't feel right to chase it, like you can tell the difference energetically when you're trying to force something or chase something versus when you're just kind of surrendering, like, I don't know, like, let's see.
1,000,000%. And I feel like the more that you tap into what I call celebrity energy, it's your flow state, it's your authenticity, it's all of that. Timelines start like
shifting like crazy.
Like I feel, my friends and I joke that life has like season finales. And it's like anytime there's like a big life event, and if you start watching for it, you're gonna notice these. Like, and I used to say that every like year there was a quote unquote season finale, and now I'm like, no, it's like every 4 weeks. I feel like I like had a huge quantum leap every 4 weeks.
Yes.
And I feel like even just looking at where I was a month ago, and all of the new like income generated, the businesses, the different relationships, the different creative ideas, like all of that, it just like starts and like. I like to think of it kind of like the universal slip and slide, where it's like when you get on, it's just, and that also I think helps with believing and trusting that you don't have to go after your desires. They're all just, when you're just in the flow, they just start coming to you really fast.
Totally. Like it kind of makes me think about how they say with manifestation, like, you know, you're scripting, like you want to script out your life and you want to make sure you're being super intentional about all the things you're calling in. But I think it's, I mean, at least what I've learned in the past year or two is not putting so much pressure on yourself to have to write all of those things, and allow yourself to just be a human and experience life as it's happening for you.
Totally.
And instead just focusing on how you're showing up internally and what's going on for you internally.
Do you think though that because I would totally agree, but I think that that's only what I can do now because I spent so long rebuilding a mental foundation with myself, where like, cause I used to be the girl who was like journaling every morning and going on a walk. Like it was like a 10-step regimented thing. And now I feel like I'm just able to kind of like witness the limiting belief and let it go quickly enough that I do feel like I can just kind of live life.
Interesting. That's a skill. That's honestly a skill. Like being able to tap into that energy is huge. Because like we sometimes put a lot of rules around what it's supposed to look like, but when you just let yourself kind of live in the present and just do what feels good, that's usually how everything starts to come together as well. So
absolutely,
that's a big part of it. There's another thing. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, this little trick of if you want to be super magnetic, if you want to be able to walk into a room with confidence, you walk into the room and you imagine that you're taking each 4 corners of the room and you're putting them in your pocket.
Ooh.
Have you heard of that?
No.
So that's something that I actually started doing a couple years ago when I learned about it, and it makes a huge difference.
Well, that makes so much sense because I think Joe Dispenza talks about like the bringing the walls in.
Oh, really?
To you. That's a big part, and something I help clients with is often getting your energy to expand to all the sides of the room and then beyond it.
Yes.
That's a great tip.
Such a good, like it just really makes you feel like you own the room.
Yeah.
Like you have to walk into a room like God sent you to be there.
Totally.
That's another really good quote too.
100%. And I think there's also this idea in acting that in a scene, one character has status and the other one doesn't. And that doesn't necessarily mean like societal status. It means who's holding the power dynamic in the room. And I think that's like a kind of a helpful mantra is like, I am in charge of the energy of this room. Like I am commanding the presence of this room.
Totally.
And I think that's why you hear about like divas like clashing heads or whatever is because they're like, no, I'm in charge of the energy. I'm in charge, you know, or whatever.
Totally.
But I think just owning and being, it's really just being an active participant of your life though.
Totally.
And being like, no, this is my purpose. Like
I'm the main character.
I'm the main character.
Totally. Yeah. And really being able to sit in that energy feels a lot different because it's a very leadership type of energy of like, I'm steering the ship and I know what I'm doing.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying. Like, you know, I think one of the most helpful things you can do is just identify where in your life are you already like that.
Yeah.
Because there's somewhere, there has to be somewhere in your life that you already feel that way. And you can actually just tap in, see what it feels like in your body. And then, and no one, this is the homework that's like the easiest homework. It's completely free and none of you are going to do it, is to just sit in that feeling. Like figure out what it actually feels like in your body and then sit in meditation and practice recalling that feeling in your body.
And like remembering, totally. And remembering that your current reality is a byproduct of the last 3 months of your thoughts and emotions. Oh. And if you just changed how you were showing up for 3 months, that, like you said, the timeline shift would be so quick. Be like,
okay, that makes me so excited for 3 months from now because I'm like, good things are happening.
Good things are building there as you make those shifts. Everything is starting to be reflected back to you. So you really just have to be patient. So with that, Whitney, thank you so much. This has been such a great episode. I feel like we touched on so many things.
So fun.
I hope you guys all got what you needed out of this. You are just such a wise soul, and I'm loving the spiritual aspect of things too. I think that's really helping to tie everything together. And before we sign off, I like to do at the end of every Limitless episode, a Limitless challenge of the week for listeners to be able to integrate what they've learned from the episode.
Okay.
So do you have anything at the top of your mind as a celeb coach of what they should be doing as their Limitless challenge of the week?
Yeah, my challenge would be to go to the grocery store like you are the energetic leader of the grocery store. And just watch. The butcher's going to say hi. The cashier is going to say, you are going to become someone who always gets the best customer service.
Period. Wow, I love that. I'm going to start trying that too. Walking into the grocery store, like I own it, I command that energy, and just even like playing a game and seeing how that kind of unfolds. So Whitney, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you.
Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As usual, actually, where can they find you on socials? We'll tag you in the
Whitney
show notes.
Uland. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you guys can follow her on Instagram, on TikTok. She's incredible. You will love her content if you love this episode especially. And don't forget to follow on or subscribe to YouTube if you like to watch the full videos of these, and then Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe on there as well so you can keep up with all these amazing new episodes. And with that, thank you again, Whitney, and I hope you guys have an amazing week. We'll catch you next time.